He always believed that life would only truly begin once he achieved what he longed for. A promotion at work, financial stability, the perfect relationship. There was always something ahead, as if happiness were a prize reserved only for later. But the more he chased after it, the farther away it seemed. It was as if each achievement only opened the door to a new sense of lack, a new race to run. This endless pursuit, instead of bringing joy, left him exhausted. It wasn't the world around him that was crushing him, but the tension of trying to control every detail, of holding so tightly to the future that he forgot to live the present. It was on one of those silent nights, when the weight felt unbearable, that he came across an ancient reflection. Stop searching. Life is already happening now. At first, it sounded like a provocation. How could he not search? How could he not chase? But little by little, those words began to make sense. Perhaps the answer wasn't in running faster, but in stopping the aimless race. The secret of the wise was not to abandon dreams, but to learn how to desire without becoming a slave to desire. Life flows when we stop suffocating it with expectations. It's like a lake that only reflects the moon when it's calm. The more we try to grasp the image in the water, the more it slips away. But when we stop and breathe, the beauty appears on its own, clear and serene. Before we continue, I want to invite you to subscribe to this channel. Here we share reflections inspired by Stoicism and other philosophies that teach us to live with more clarity, serenity, and inner strength. If this message resonates with you, this is the right place to keep walking alongside us. He began to realize that the true source of his exhaustion was not life itself, but the constant desire to control everything, to control time, people, outcomes. It was as if he believed he could only find peace once the world fit perfectly into his plans. But the world rarely follows the script we write. This need to hold everything in his own hands created the opposite effect. The tighter he tried to hold, the more things slipped away. The fear of losing turned into anxiety, the anxiety into despair, and the despair into a sense of emptiness. It was a silent cycle that distanced him from himself. It was in that moment that he remembered the wisdom of the ancients. It is not within our power to command the winds, but we can adjust the sails. Life doesn't need to be controlled to be lived. On the contrary, the more we try to force it, the more tension we create. He understood that the secret was not to abandon dreams, but to stop turning them into shackles. Excessive effort, constant pressure, and endless comparison only widened the gap between him and the peace he longed for. It was like trying to capture the reflection of the moon with his hands. In the end, he only disturbed the water and lost the beauty of the moment. When he finally let go, he realized something unexpected. Life didn't collapse without his control. On the contrary, it began to flow in surprising ways. People arrived, opportunities appeared, and even obstacles felt lighter. Not because everything became easy, but because his attitude had changed. This was the secret of the wise. True strength is not in holding the world, but in learning to walk in harmony with it. For a long time, he believed that peace was stored somewhere in the distance, reserved for the day he achieved everything he desired. But little by little, he realized that this belief was the very root of his restlessness. After all, how can you rest if your mind is always projected into tomorrow? Then he came to understand a truth both simple and profound. Peace is not in the future, it is in the present. The future never arrives in the way we imagine, and when it does, it has already turned into another present. To keep running after what does not yet exist is to abandon your own life. The wise taught that we should not fight against the natural flow of things. Accept what life brings and use it as part of your path. This acceptance does not mean passivity, but clarity. Instead of wasting energy trying to predict or force outcomes, he decided to focus on the now, on the choices he could make, the attitude he could cultivate, the way he could respond to what was in front of him. And something surprising happened. By letting go of the obsession with tomorrow, today came alive. Breakfast stopped being a rushed routine and became a moment of presence. A conversation with a friend stopped being background noise to worries and became a genuine encounter. Even difficulties, when faced without the weight of anticipation, became lighter to carry. He discovered that life does not need to be postponed until perfect conditions arrive. Life is happening now, in the middle of imperfections, at the pace of the unexpected. When we release the need to control time, we begin to see that the present is the only place where transformation is possible. He used to believe that the harder he worked, the faster he would reach his goals. Working without rest, demanding from himself at every second, forcing situations, it all seemed like a demonstration of strength. But in truth, this excess didn't bring him closer to peace. It pushed him into a constant state of tension. The paradox is that excessive effort becomes the greatest obstacle. The more he tried to push life, the more it resisted. The more he demanded immediate answers, the further he felt from what he was seeking. It was like a clenched fist trying to hold water. The harder he pressed, the faster it slipped through his fingers. Then he remembered an ancient metaphor. The mind is like a lake. If you plunge your hands into the water trying to capture the reflection of the moon, you only cause turbulence and lose the beauty of the image. But if you simply breathe and wait, the surface calms and the reflection returns. Life is the same. The more we try to force it, the further we drift from what we truly desire. He understood that true strength is not found in desperate control, but in the ability to let go. Letting go does not mean giving up. It means changing your foundation. It means no longer acting out of fear, but out of clarity. It means stopping the endless race in circles and finally walking in the right direction, even if only in small steps. The wise never confused discipline with obsession. Discipline is born from calm, constancy, and balance. Obsession, on the other hand, is born from the fear of not being enough. One strengthens you, the other drains you. And he began to see which of the two had been guiding his days. Deep down, what kept him trapped in endless pursuit was not ambition, but fear. Fear of losing, fear of failing, fear of not being recognized. It was this fear that made him run without pause, trying to cling to every detail of life as if it could be held between his fingers. But little by little he realized that trust is more powerful than fear. Trust does not mean sitting back with folded arms waiting for miracles. It means moving forward even without guarantees, taking steps even when the path seems dark. It means choosing to act, even when the heart is racing. The wise said that trust is not naivety but clarity. It does not mean denying risks, but believing that whatever the outcome, you have the strength to endure it. Life does not ask for certainty. It asks for courage. He understood that trust is like learning to swim. The more you struggle not to sink, the more tired and desperate you become. But when you relax and surrender to the water, it begins to hold you up. Life is the same. The more we try to control it, the more it slips away. But when we trust, it carries us forward. This change in perspective did not remove problems from his path, but it changed the way he faced them. He no longer acted out of haste or anxiety, but chose with greater firmness. He stopped being a prisoner of fear and became an ally of clarity. Trust did not make him invincible, but it made him whole, and that wholeness was exactly what brought him closer to what he had been seeking all along, a life at peace with himself. He began to notice that much of his anxiety came from the constant sense of lack. Lack of recognition, lack of money, lack of love, lack of time. His mind woke up every day listing absences, as if life were always incomplete. But this outlook did not open doors, it closed them. The more he thought about what he lacked, the further he drifted from seeing what was already present. A mind trapped in scarcity is like a foggy lens. No matter how beautiful the scenery, it will always find flaws. The wise compared this attitude to two creatures walking along the same road. The first, a fly, sees only the waste along the way. The second, a bee, finds flowers and feeds on their nectar. The world is the same, but the perspective is different. He realized that by focusing only on what was missing, he was strengthening an identity of scarcity. It was as if he kept telling himself, "Nothing is enough, nothing is possible." And that thought shaped not only his emotions, but also his decisions. The change began when he decided to replace the question, "What am I lacking?" with, "What can I build with what I already have?" This simple shift in focus created space for gratitude, and with it, new possibilities. It wasn't magic, it was a change in mindset. Abundance doesn't grow from the outside in, it begins as an inner state, cultivated in the silence of someone who recognizes they already have enough to take the next step. When he stopped begging life for more and began to see himself as someone capable of creating, doors started to open. He realized that many desires didn't come true not because they were impossible, but because he himself didn't truly believe in them. Deep down, he kept waiting to feel confident first and only then act. But the wise taught the opposite. It is action that creates confidence, not the other way around. If he wanted peace, he needed to act as someone already cultivating peace. If he wanted respect, he had to walk with dignity. If he longed for love, he had to learn to be present, without distractions. It wasn't about waiting for a perfect future, but about living now in the energy of what he wished to attract. He understood that life responds more to attitudes than to requests. Repeating, "I want abundance" 1,000 times is useless if, in practice, he kept sabotaging himself with comparisons and complaints. But when he began living with gratitude for what he already had, even if it was little, the world started to respond differently. This became a turning point. Stop acting like a beggar and start acting like a builder. Instead of begging for results, he chose to live in coherence with his values, as if he were already on the right path. And each gesture, each small decision, became proof that he was already closer to what he sought. The secret was not to wait for the perfect moment, but to create the space for the moment to bloom. By changing his posture, he also changed his frequency. It wasn't magic, it was logic. When you behave like someone confident, people around you start to believe in you. When you act with serenity, you radiate peace. When you cultivate self-love, you attract healthier relationships. This is what the wise meant when they reminded, "First decide who you want to be, and then do what is necessary." Speaking about letting go and trusting sounds simple in theory, but in practice, resistance always arises. He felt this himself. Deep down, something kept him from releasing control. Fear. Fear of losing. Fear of failing. Fear of being left empty-handed. It was like holding a sharp stone. The harder he gripped it, the more he hurt himself. Another obstacle was impatience. He wanted everything to happen immediately, as if life were obligated to follow his pace. But seeds don't bloom at the moment they're planted. They require a silent time of waiting, trust, and maturation. There was also the rigidity of expectations. He had drawn a perfect script in his mind and suffered every time reality refused to follow its lines. But was life really disappointing him, or was he simply clinging to an impossible ideal? That's when he realized the suffering didn't come from what actually happened, but from the image he had created of how things should be. Pride also appeared. Deep down, he believed that letting go meant giving up, failing, admitting weakness. But little by little, he came to understand that letting go is an act of wisdom. It's not abandonment, but recognition that we do not have control over everything. It is the humility of walking alongside life, not against it. These obstacles don't disappear all at once. They test our patience, our courage, our trust. But by recognizing them, he began to see that each one carried a lesson. Fear taught him about courage. Impatience revealed the importance of time. Rigidity showed him the value of flexibility. And pride reminded him that true strength is born from humility. He realized that one of his greatest mistakes was pouring all his energy into the final result. He wanted success, recognition, happiness, but forgot that none of these were under his direct control. Obsession with the outcome only produced frustration, because the world doesn't always respond the way we expect. Then he came across a powerful lesson. You don't control the outcome, you control the process. You can't guarantee a promotion, but you can decide to give your best today. You can't control whether you'll be loved, but you can choose to act with kindness and respect in your relationships. You can't predict when opportunities will arrive, but you can prepare yourself to be ready when they do. This shift in focus brought lightness. The burden of "I must get there" gave way to the strength of "I can take a step now." He understood that the process is what shapes character, while the result is only a consequence. By turning his attention to small daily actions, he began to feel a new kind of peace. A peace that didn't depend on applause or completed goals, but on the certainty of walking with integrity. It was like planting seeds without anxiety for them to bloom, knowing that each watering, each bit of care was already part of the miracle of growth. The wise knew that success is not something to be chased. It happens when you live with purpose. And purpose is not built in tomorrow, but in today. In the end, he realized that life does not demand perfection, but presence. It doesn't ask us to control everything, but to learn how to walk with clarity. The secret of the wise was never to accumulate power or conquer the impossible, but to live in harmony with what cannot be controlled. When he released the need to prove his worth, he felt freer. When he stopped running after everything in desperation, he began to notice that what truly mattered was already around him. The silence of a morning, the company of those who stayed, the strength that was born within himself. He discovered he didn't need to beg for love, plead for recognition, or imprison himself in comparison. It was enough to live with wholeness, act with dignity, and cultivate calm. The rest life would take care of, in the right time, in the right way. It was then that he understood the true meaning of one of Marcus Aurelius's phrases: "Receive without arrogance, let go without attachment." Everything that arrives is welcome. Everything that leaves carries away only what was not essential. What remains, remains because it is aligned with who you have become. And that's why today he can say with confidence, when you stop searching desperately, when you release the weight of obsession, life begins to flow. Not because it is magical, but because you finally made space to receive it. If this message touched your heart, remember, don't walk alone. Subscribe to the channel and continue with us on this journey of reflection and inner strength. Here, ancient wisdom meets modern challenges to remind us that even in the midst of chaos, we can always choose calm.